So they're doing this thing, like these different groups do it. Same with I mentioned the national anarchists would try to. They call themselves anarchists, but they're racial separatists and Strasserites from like the left wing of the Nazi Party. So pretty much not anarchists. And I'm trying to think of other groups that did that, but mainly I'm thinking one of the guys that I guess flies under the radar sometimes is Abraham Foxman and his organization, the Anti-Defamation League, who are supposed to be a civil rights agency. And the ADL states that it fights anti-Semitism and all forms of bigotry, defends democratic ideals, and protects civil rights for all, while it advocates for Israel with policymakers, the media, and the public, and defends the security of Israel and Jews worldwide. I mean, I don't know. To me, that seems like those two things could clash depending on what the country they're defending is doing. Like I mentioned a long time ago that when I first got into like kind of anti-racist causes, I noticed a lot of these anti-racist groups were like, this was the one I had in mind. In fact, I don't think the other ones even do it that much. They might. I mean, I don't know, but they always do this thing like, we're against racism, sexism, homophobia, and we support Israel. And I was like, wait a second, what if Israel has something homophobic in it? Or what if Israel's doing something sexist? Or what if Israel's doing something racist? You know? So, I mean, the criticism of the ADL is pretty strong from most camps that support the Palestinians because they're just pretty much unendingly apologetic for Israel. Anytime Israel commits acts of aggression, it's, self-defense, things like that. And they kind of push this idea of new anti-Semitism. Like, every time Israel commits things like war crimes, they start talking about how there's a rise in anti-Semitism. Clearly, everyone in the world hates Jews more all of a sudden. We can't figure out why it's happening, but apparently people be hating us Jews or something. Like, nah, not really. I mean, they conflate pretty much systematically any criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism. So it doesn't really make any sense. I mean, and that is pretty much their position. Like here's this quote from Finkelstein. The ADL and its president, Foxman, have advanced a preposterous deception. It's every time Israel comes under international pressure, as it did recently because of the war crimes committed in Lebanon, it steps up the claim of anti-Semitism, and all of Israel's critics are anti-Semitic. So that's kind of twisted. And yeah, I mean that's from his book Beyond Chutzpah, or however the hell you pronounce that. But anyway, like, they do that. And then on top of that, I mean, what's weird is though they defend sometimes the rights of Arabs in America, but they don't seem to really give a shit about Arabs anywhere else, I guess. I mean, they've had a lot of tension with like Muslim groups and Arab groups in America, which you would think, I mean, as much as they defend Muslims in America, they've also gone on this kind of like witch hunt against pretty much anyone who's critical of Israel, and they got like write them off as anti-Semites. The other weird thing that their group does is they engage in genocide denial, which this group is pretty vicious against anyone who denies the Jewish genocide, but at the same time they deny the Armenian genocide, because as a group they're supposed to be kind of friendly with Israel, and if they're friendly with Israel, they have to be friendly with Turkey, and if they have to be friendly with Turkey, then they have to fucking shit all over the Armenians. So they got burned for it actually a few years ago. They were being pressured by the Turkish government to oppose a statement by the U.S. Congress that basically labels what the Turks did to the Armenians as a genocide. That genocide, if I read it right, it killed about 2 million people. And it was the first major systematic slaughter of a group of people. It was before the Holocaust. So it was like the first modern slaughter, extermination, systematic extermination. So yeah, but they denied it, and they kept on getting pressed to answer for their denial, and it was obvious that like unlike some of the conspiracy nuts that actually believe things like the Holocaust or the Srebrenica massacre or the Nakba or the Native American genocide, any of those, a lot of like nationalists and a lot of idiots and a lot of conspiracy nuts will try to deny that happening because they really don't believe it happened. Like they really, because that just fits their worldview better. If they tell themselves it didn't happen, that's a lot less sympathy they have to give this group or that group. Or it's a lot like you say, if you're a Nazi and you deny the Holocaust, then hey, it makes Hitler look better, so you don't look as bad, kind of thing. So, and it's not because they don't. That doesn't mean they don't really believe it. It's just they're more comfortable believing certain things. And not that everyone who denies a genocide is a racist. Some people just do it for political reasons. Like this is a perfect reason. They do it because they're supposed to be supporting Turkey, and you can tell Foxman doesn't actually believe that there was no genocide there. But nonetheless, he kind of slaps the Armenians in the face with this genocide denial. Now, it's different for me because, personally, I don't think genocide denial amounts to racism. I think it just amounts to kind of a very pseudo-intellectual understanding of a history. There are some things that turned out to not be, genocides. Like what happened to the Tibetans, a lot of that, looking back, I have to take some of it back because a lot of it wasn't recorded. Like, the idea that 2 million Tibetans were killed by the Chinese was actually kind of an overstatement. But it was like they didn't record the victims properly, and it was like pretty obvious apparently that the Tibetans had kind of overinflated their dead. Not that that justifies anything China did to them, but genocide denials, a lot of time people that deny them, it could be because they're trying to make Hitler look good, but it could just be because it's for some other political reason it's more comfortable for them to believe that. Like if you're in Turkey, maybe it's easier for you to believe that Armenians never suffered under the Turkish government. Or if you're Israeli, maybe it's easier for you to believe that the Palestinians were responsible for their own expulsion. Or if you're American and you really like the American government, maybe it's just easier for you to believe that the Native Americans didn't suffer, a genocide. And maybe that it was just a war or something like that, and a bunch of people died on both sides. Both sides is the new favorite term for people who don't want to seem controversial, I guess. But yeah, this group has been pretty vociferous in saying genocide denial or Holocaust denial is racist. So when they come out and say something like the Armenian genocide, that what happened to the Armenians was only tantamount to genocide, or they're taking orders from the Turkish government to oppose a congressional resolution recognizing the Armenian genocide, when they're doing stuff like that, I would consider that, I guess, by Foxman's definition, he is a racist. And yet he's coming out and saying, "Oh, our group's against racism and whatnot." So and it's especially funny because if this guy went to France and expressed his views, he would be arrested because genocide denial of any flavor is illegal in France, and I think there's only been one guy who's ever gotten in trouble for it in France. He had to pay like a fine of like $1 or something. It was a joke, but yeah, technically it's illegal, and he got in trouble for denying the Armenian genocide, not the Holocaust. So, and now they're doing it. So it's kind of backwards. Like, this is a group of people that's saying genocide denial is racist, and if you're racist, you're evil, and screw racism, we're against racism. But when Israel does war crimes, suddenly the backlash is because of racism, and when it's convenient for them to deny genocide denial, it's okay. I mean, it's kind of absurd.